There's a quiet observation that almost everyone eventually makes in their career. You see it over time, in meeting after meeting, year after year. It's this. The most capable person, well, they don't always grow the fastest.
And sometimes you realize it's the person who really understands the room, not just the work itself. And let's be honest, seeing that play out can be, well, it can be deeply unsettling.
So, yeah, it's an uncomfortable observation, and it really gets at why talent isn't always enough. I mean, if you spend any real time in a professional setting, you've seen it, haven't you? Promotions, people getting bypassed, all those silent decisions that, really shape a career. So today, let's talk about why this happens, why these organizational dynamics often seem to outweigh pure talent, and why that truth makes so many of us feel so uncomfortable.
So, why does this make us so uncomfortable? It's a good question. And that feeling, it isn't just about disappointment. No, it goes deeper than that. It strikes at a really core belief most of us have about work and about fairness. And that brings us to this idea of the myth of meritocracy. It's worth examining our core belief about work here. See, most of us are raised to believe in a meritocracy. You know the idea, right? That the best work, the smartest ideas, and the hardest effort will just naturally rise to the top. So when we see evidence that says otherwise, it creates this friction, a real conflict between what we feel should be true and what we're actually seeing with our own eyes.
And this really lays out that gap perfectly. On one side, you have the belief. It's simple. Hard work and talent are the sole drivers of success. But then, on the other side, you have the observation. And what we see again and again is that social dynamics and influence, well, they often play a decisive role.
Now, the easy thing to do here is to get frustrated and blame bad actors or schemers. But I want you to consider something else. What if the issue isn't really about bad people at all? What if the real problem is just a flawed assumption we all started with about how groups of people, how organizations, actually work?
This brings us to a reframe. Let's look at politics as a system. This is about taking a neutral look at these organizational dynamics. Instead of seeing office politics as some kind of dirty game, what if we just look at it neutrally, as a system, as the underlying architecture of how things actually get done?
So let me ask you this. What if politics is just the name we give to the human operating system of any organization? Think about that. Not good, not bad, it just is. It's the way it works whenever people get together to try and achieve a common goal.
And if we define it that way, it helps remove the moral judgment. See, office politics in this view isn't about scheming or backstabbing. It's just the informal, unwritten system that we humans use to gain influence, manage shared resources, and drive collective decisions. That's all it is. Fundamentally, it's about how power and attention get allocated in a group.
When you start to see politics as a system, your language starts to change too. It's not about manipulation anymore. It's about influence. It's not about cliques. It's about alliances. It's not about schemes. It's about understanding stakeholder incentives. And it's not hoarding. It's just the messy but necessary process of resource allocation. See? It's the same reality, just viewed through a much more objective, systems-oriented lens.
Okay, so this brings us to a key shift, from execution to observation. It's about shifting your focus to understand the system. Now, how does all this translate into something practical for you? Well, the good news is, it isn't about changing who you are. Not at all. It's simply about changing what you pay attention to.
And let me be really clear about this. The goal here is absolutely not to play the game in some manipulative way. Frankly, that usually backfires. No, the goal is much simpler. It's just to understand the environment you're in with a bit more clarity. It's about seeing the whole board, not just focusing on your own little square.
So the first step is to shift your focus a little bit from pure task execution. And the next step is to start observing the flows of information and influence around you. And from there, the third step is to begin understanding the unwritten rules of your organization. You keep doing excellent work, that's the foundation. But you also start dedicating, say, just 5 or 10% of your attention to observing. How does information really flow here? Who actually listens to whom?
Here's a very simple first step, a practical question to ask yourself. The next time you're in a big meeting, just quietly observe and ask, who in this room holds the formal power? The title. And who holds the informal influence? The person who really has the ear of the room. You'll find they are very often not the same person.
And understanding that difference, well, that's key.
All of this observation, this understanding, it brings us to what I'd call the real work. This is about what lies beyond the tasks on your job description. This is the work of a truly seasoned professional. Because here is a fundamental truth that took me a long time to learn. Organizations are social systems first and businesses second. I'll say that again. They are social systems that just happen to do business, not the other way around. So understanding that social system isn't optional. It's a prerequisite to being truly effective. You know, your technical skills, they get you in the door. But understanding the human system, that's what allows you to make a real, lasting impact.
And so, I want to leave you with the same question we started with, but reframed now as a tool for you, a tool for your own observation. As you move forward in every project, in every meeting, just ask yourself this: who in this room understands the work and who understands the room? The answer to that question, I promise you, will tell you almost everything you need to know about how decisions are really going to be made.
All right, let's talk about a phrase that tends to make people a little tense: office politics. Just hearing it can make you feel uneasy, right? It's usually tied to all sorts of negativity, something we're told to stay away from. But today, we're going to try something different. We're going to look at it not as a dirty game, but as a system. And once you understand a system, you can learn to navigate it. So just for a moment, I want you to think about that. When you hear the words office politics, what's the first thing that pops into your head? What are those gut feelings or images that come up? Just be honest with yourself.
I'm willing to bet that whatever you thought of, it probably wasn't positive. And you know what? That's completely normal. That widespread negative feeling is what we can call the politics problem. This probably looks pretty familiar. For most of us, office politics just means gossip, manipulation, a feeling that there's some kind of dirty game being played behind the scenes, where things aren't fair. And look, those feelings are valid. They often come from real, frustrating experiences. But for our purposes here, let's just set those behaviors aside for a minute. If we want to really understand what's going on, we have to look past the symptoms and get to the underlying system. We need a more useful definition.
Here's a really crucial shift in thinking. We often mix up the negative behaviors of politics with politics itself. The reality is, politics at its core is really about two neutral forces: influence and perception. It's about how ideas gain support and how you and your work are seen by others. These things aren't inherently good or bad. They're just the basic currencies of any organization.
And to build on that, the system also runs on two other key elements: alignment and timing. Alignment is just about getting the right people on the same page. You know, if you want a new project approved, it's not enough for just your boss to say yes. You might need people in finance or engineering to see why it's a good idea too. And timing? Well, that's just knowing when to ask. Probably a better idea after a great quarter than during a budget freeze, right? These aren't sneaky tactics, they're just fundamental skills for getting things done with other people.
So when you start to see politics through this lens, as a system of influence, perception, alignment, and timing, you start to realize something important. This isn't a flaw in your particular company. It's a feature of any group of humans trying to work together. It's an unavoidable system.
This system is a constant. It's in every company, every nonprofit, every community group. Honestly, anywhere people are working towards a goal together, this informal system of influence is going to show up. It's just a natural part of how we collaborate. Now, a common myth is that a nice or great company culture means there's no politics. And that's just a fundamental misunderstanding. A healthy culture doesn't get rid of this system of influence. It just makes sure the system is used in a constructive, ethical way. The machinery is always there, even in the absolute best, most collaborative places to work. And this all leads us to the most important mental shift in this whole discussion. If this system is everywhere, then what is it actually for? What is its function? Well, it's quite simple. It's the operating system for how power moves through an organization.
I want you to let that sentence really sink in for a moment. Office politics isn't dirty, it's simply how power moves. That isn't a moral judgment. It's not about good guys and bad guys. It's a neutral observation, like describing how water flows downhill. It just is.
And we have to be very clear about what we mean by power here. This isn't about having authority or dominance over other people. In the professional world, power is simply the ability to get things done. It's your capacity to take an idea from just a concept to a reality. It's about being effective.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. If politics is simply the system for how things get done in an organization, what is your role within that system? The goal isn't to fight it or to pretend it doesn't exist. The real challenge is to understand it. How can you navigate this system effectively and ethically to make a positive impact? That, really, is the only question that truly matters.
Hello there. Let's talk about something many of us have felt at some point in our careers. It's that feeling you get when you're doing everything right, you're working hard, but you're just not moving up. It can feel like the goalposts keep moving and you're not sure why. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on what those unspoken rules actually are.
So let me ask you this. Why does great work, at some point, seem to stop being enough? You know, you're hitting your targets, you're exceeding expectations, but that promotion just doesn't come. It is an incredibly common and frustrating place to be. And the reason, I can tell you, isn't that your work has lost its value. It's that the very definition of value has started to change.
When you first start your career, the path forward seems so clear, doesn't it? The rules are simple: be talented, work hard, and you'll get noticed. It feels like a genuine meritocracy, and for a while, it really does work. But you have to understand, that's just the first chapter of a much longer story.
And here you can see the shift. Early on, it's all about what you can do, your individual talent, your personal effort. But later, as you move into that mid-career space, it becomes about something more. It becomes about your impact, your visibility, and, well, here's the big one, the trust that leaders have in you. It's not that the rules have changed to trick you, it's that what the organization needs from you has evolved.
This really gets to the very heart of the matter. You are valued for your execution, for your skills, your effort, for getting the job done. But you are selected for representation. Now that's a subtle distinction, but it is absolutely crucial. It's no longer just about what you can do. It's about who you can be for the organization.
To really understand this, we need to try and see the world from a leader's perspective. For them, a promotion isn't just a reward for things you've done in the past. It's a strategic decision about the future. It's an act of trust. It's an act of delegation. They are quite literally choosing someone to represent them.
And this is what that trust really looks like in practice. A leader has to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you will represent their decisions correctly, that you will uphold their standards, that you will act as their proxy when they're not in the room. And that is a level of trust that goes far, far beyond just being good at your job.
Let's just pause here for a moment. Talent makes you useful. Politics makes you selectable. Your talent is what gets you in the game. It makes you a valuable, useful contributor. But it's the politics, and we'll get to that word in a moment. It's the relationships, the influence, the trust. That's what ultimately makes you selectable.
Now, I know what many of you are probably thinking. The word politics just sounds a bit dirty, doesn't it? It often brings up images of backroom deals and playing games. But what if we reframed it? What if we stopped seeing it as a chaotic game and started seeing it as a system?
When you look at politics this way, simply as the system leaders use to select people they trust to represent them, it's no longer a dirty word. It becomes something understandable, something you can navigate. This isn't about being disingenuous or manipulative. It's about fundamentally understanding how trust is built and demonstrated in your organization.
So here's really the key takeaway from all of this. Don't waste your energy fighting the system. Understand it, because when you truly understand how it works, you can navigate it with integrity. You can operate within it with purpose, and you can empower yourself to finally get the recognition that you've earned.
So I'll leave you with a different question to ponder. Instead of asking, why isn't my hard work getting noticed? I'd encourage you to start asking yourself this. If selection is really a system of trust, what does it truly take to be trusted here? Answering that question, that is what will unlock your next promotion.
You know, there's a real comfort in the parts of our careers we can see and measure. Things like performance reviews, targets, all those metrics that tell us right there on paper how we're doing. It's a very logical, very neat and tidy world. But after many years of watching careers unfold, I can tell you that this visible structure, well, it's only half the story. Today, I want to talk about that other half, the hidden architecture, the part that more often than not really makes the difference.
So you see something like this, 98% of KPIs achieved. It feels solid, right? Like an objective truth. And it is.
This represents your hard work, your tangible output. And let's be very clear about this. Hitting your numbers is absolutely the foundation. It's your ticket to even be in the game. You could call it the official story of your contribution. But it's not the whole story. It's the what you did, not the so what of your work.
Now, this is really the heart of the matter. Most promotions are decided when you're not in the room. It sounds a little cynical, doesn't it? But it's not meant to be. It's just a simple, straightforward observation of how human systems actually work. The most important, most consequential conversations about your career, they're going to happen when you're not there to make your case. And understanding this isn't about being paranoid. Not at all. It's simply about being realistic.
So, if that's true, what on earth are they talking about in that room? Well, I can tell you they're not just rereading your performance review. No, they're talking about something much less tangible. They're discussing perception. They're talking about the story that is formed around your work. It's not just about what you did, but about how it landed, who knows about it, and what it all suggests about your future potential. You see, they're trying to piece together a story about the future of the organization, and they're trying to figure out if you're going to be one of the main characters in it.
Let's break this down a bit because this distinction is crucial. On one side, you have your performance. Think of this as what your spreadsheet says about you. It's the what of your work, the objective data points. Clean, simple. But then, on the other side, you have your narrative. This is what leaders say about you. It's the so what of your work. It's built on things like subjective trust and perceived impact. You absolutely need both. But so many people pour all their energy into the left column and completely forget that the right column even exists.
Okay, so when you first start to really see this, it's completely natural to have a certain reaction. You might think, well, this whole system is just corrupt, or it's all about politics, not merit. And believe me, that's a very, very common feeling. But here's the thing. Framing it that way, as something corrupt or political, isn't actually very helpful. In fact, it kind of stops you from really understanding what's going on underneath.
The reality is much simpler and much less sinister. The system isn't corrupt. It's human. That's it. It's just human. Think about it. These big decisions are being made by people for an organization that is, of course, filled with other people. And when human beings face uncertainty and deciding who to trust with more responsibility is a big uncertainty, they don't just rely on a spreadsheet. They naturally look for other signals.
And there's actually a name for this underlying mechanism. It's a psychological phenomenon called social proof. Let me explain what that means in this context. When a leader has to make a high-stakes decision, like promoting someone, they're taking a risk. A personal risk, a professional risk. Your past performance data is helpful, for sure, but it's no guarantee of future success. So to make themselves feel more certain, to reduce that sense of risk, what do? They look for consensus from other leaders they trust. They rely on the shared story, that established narrative about you. It's a fundamental human shortcut for navigating uncertainty.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, the goal here isn't to fight this reality. That's exhausting, and frankly, it doesn't work. The goal is to understand it and work with it. So first, you just have to acknowledge that your career runs on these two parallel tracks, your performance and your narrative. Second, you have to truly accept that decisions are made by people, for people, with all the subjectivity that comes with it. And finally, with that understanding, you can begin to shift your focus. Just a little. You continue to do excellent work, of course, but you also start paying attention to the story that's being told about that work.
And that really brings us to the one question you should leave with today. What is the story being told about you when you are not in the room? Now, I don't want this question to make you anxious. That's not the point. The point is to give you a new, more powerful lens to look through. Thinking about this doesn't mean you have to become a politician. Not at all. It means you're becoming a thoughtful steward of your own career. Because once you begin to understand that story, you can start to ensure it truly reflects the value you bring, and, just as importantly, the potential you have yet to show.
You know, there's a feeling that's, well, it's pretty common for really talented, hardworking people. It's that sense of frustration when you pour everything into your work, you do great work, and you believe that should be enough. But then you watch as opportunities and recognition seem to go to other people. Today, we're not going to talk about quick fixes or tricks. We're just going to try and understand the system that's actually at play here.
And that really is the question, isn't it? It can be a deeply unsettling one to ask, because it goes right to the heart of what we believe about fairness and value in our professional lives. It makes us look at a belief that we feel, deep down, really should be true.
And there it is. That's the core belief. This idea that the quality of our work,
the excellence we put into it, should be obvious to everyone, that it doesn't need a marketing campaign or a spokesperson. It should just stand on its own. Now, let's be very clear about this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that perspective. In fact, it's an honorable one. It comes from a place of integrity, a belief in a true meritocracy, where the best ideas and the best execution win out. The belief itself, that's not the problem. So, if the belief is so honorable, why does it so often lead to us being overlooked? Well, the answer seems to lie in our own resistance to what most people call playing the game. And this resistance, it comes from some very real, very understandable places. There's a genuine fear of being seen as insincere, right? Of becoming that person who just tells people what they want to hear. And then there's the discomfort with self-promotion. It can feel boastful, a little undignified. And of course, both of those feelings are propped up by that core belief we just talked about, that the work and only the work should be what counts. But holding on to these beliefs, as honorable as they are, can have an unintended consequence, a hidden cost that's really important to understand if we want to see the situation for what it is. And we could call this the price of invisibility. You see, the story we tell ourselves is a comforting one. We think, by avoiding all that political nonsense, I'm keeping my contribution pure. But the reality, more often than not, is something quite different. By stepping away from the human system of our workplace, we aren't protecting our work. We're just making it invisible. You know, maybe the word politics is the problem here. It's got so much negative baggage attached to it, so let's try to reframe it. Don't think of it as scheming or manipulation. Think of it more like the basic operating system of the organization. It's just the neutral system that determines how influence is shared and how decisions get made. It's not good or bad, it just is. And as soon as you start to see it that way, as just a neutral system, your place within it starts to look very different. This shift in perspective makes one absolutely essential reframe possible. And this right here is the heart of it. Deciding not to engage with this system doesn't make the system go away, it just removes you from it. It removes your voice from the key conversations, it removes your work from consideration when decisions are being made. The system just keeps on running, but without you in it. So the question to ask isn't, should I play politics? That's the wrong way to look at it. I think the real question, the much more useful one, is this. What does it mean for you to be fully present in your work? Not as someone playing a game, but as a visible, engaged contributor whose excellent work is actually seen, understood, and valued. Now that is a question worth spending some time with. Let's talk about a phrase that makes most of us cringe a little, office politics. It just sounds unpleasant, doesn't it? A kind of necessary evil, a game we'd rather not play. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? Today, we're going to re-examine this whole idea not as a moral problem, but as a basic, fundamental part of how organizations actually work. So, just for a second, what word did pop into your head? I'm willing to bet it wasn't something positive. Maybe manipulation, gossip, scheming? If so, you're definitely not alone. That's an almost universal reaction, and frankly, for very good reason. It's usually rooted in our own experiences of seeing these dynamics handled quite poorly. And that's the thing, this perception is so common because, well, it's often true. We've all seen it. We see decisions get made that just don't seem to be based on merit. We see people get ahead through channels that feel less than honorable. So it's completely understandable to view it all as a game played without integrity. The only problem with that view is that it leaves us feeling powerless and cynical. So I'd like to propose a simple shift in our thinking. Instead of seeing politics as some kind of moral battle between the good guys and the bad guys, let's just try to see it as a system, a neutral system, one that can be observed and understood and ultimately navigated. Moving from judgment to simple observation, that's the critical first step to becoming more effective. So take a look at this. The common view is that it's just a dirty game. And that perspective, well, it leads straight to frustration and disengagement. But a better and, frankly, a more useful view is that it's simply the system for making decisions in any group of human beings. It's how things get done when the formal processes aren't quite enough. One is an emotional reaction. The other is a strategic observation. So let's redefine the term, just for our purposes here.
Think of office politics as the organization's informal operating system. You've got the formal org chart with all the boxes and lines, but this is the network that shows how influence actually flows, how decisions are truly made. And understanding the system isn't a moral compromise. It's a core professional competency. Okay, so if we can accept that it's a system, the question becomes, how do we navigate it? And maybe more importantly, how do we do that with our integrity completely intact? This isn't about learning to manipulate people. It's about learning to operate effectively. So let's walk through 4 clear principles that can help. First, focus on building alliances, not factions. There is a huge difference. Alliances are constructive. They're built on mutual respect and shared goals. Factions, on the other hand, are built on an us versus them mentality, which is always destructive. Second, take the time to really understand the priorities of the key decision makers. What are the pressures they're under? What outcomes do they actually value most? Aligning your work with that isn't sucking up. It's being strategically relevant. Third, and this is a big one, learn to communicate the impact of your work, not just the effort you put in. I worked all weekend on this, communicates effort. This initiative will increase our efficiency by 15%. That communicates impact. Leaders respond to impact. And finally, number 4, choose your visibility. This isn't about needing to be the loudest person in every meeting. It's about being seen and heard in the right moments on the right projects where your contributions will have the most resonance. I want to be perfectly clear about this. These 4 principles are not tools for manipulation. They are tools for professional navigation. The goal here is simply to ensure that your good work and your valuable ideas are seen, understood, and supported within the organization's existing system, all while you operate with complete integrity. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. This all sounds fine, but you know what? I'll just keep my head down and do my work. I'll just opt out of all of it. This is a very common and very tempting strategy, but it's based on a fundamental illusion. The illusion that you can actually choose not to participate. In any organizational system, you have to understand a critical truth. Silence is not neutrality. Your silence is an action. It sends a message, whether you intend it to or not. So you have to ask yourself this question directly. When you choose not to speak up, not to build those relationships, not to make your impact known, what are you communicating? Does your silence look like agreement, or apathy, or a lack of confidence? Because people will fill that vacuum with their own interpretation, and it's rarely the one you would have chosen for yourself. Inaction is still an action. This all brings us to what I consider the final mandate for any professional who's trying to navigate their career. It's a simple idea, but it's a profound one, and it really separates those who are consistently effective from those who are consistently frustrated. And this is it. This is the crucial point. You are not required to love this informal system. You don't have to become a politician in that negative sense of the word, but you do have a professional responsibility to understand it. Your effectiveness, your career progression, your ability to make a meaningful impact, all of it depends on this. Because to understand the system is to move from a place of confusion to a place of clarity. You stop just reacting to things and you start operating with professional competence. That understanding, that's the true source of your influence.